So hey everyone, welcome. Happy Friday. We're going to officially do the intro in just a little bit, but I just thought we'd switch to this because my setup here. We're talking about my setup in the back, and as I mentioned, not a single thing of this was planned as far as reclaimed piece of, and it looks like ass. I'm not trying to say like, oh, look how great I did with no effort. I did ass with no effort, but I'm telling you there was no effort. It's a reclaimed piece of furniture. Obviously, when Hijacking Bitcoin came out, I had to get that right away. Next to that is a bottle of scotch that Justin Bonds gave me. Thank you very much, Justin.
Oh, Justin Bonds, legend.
Yes, and then that's the Dash whiskey set that some random person in Belarus on Instagram said he was selling. So I sent Dash into the void, and like a couple months later, it just showed up. Fun fact: I have another one for Nimic accidentally because he sent me the wrong one for some random shitcoin. No offense, Nimic, and he just said, "Yeah, I keep that one too." So I have that floating around there somewhere. And then you see all those name badges from Consensus, ETHDAM, Litecoin Foundation. There's something from a piece of artwork that Aditya Bharadwaj gave me. He was the Nighthawk wallet developer. Then there's a Porcupine Freedom logo because myself and some other people were placed on a list of enemies of the state or whatever by some radical person. There's a bottle of Vegemite from Naomi Rockwell, of course. And I do actually consume it. This isn't just for show.
Well, I was gonna say you can't really eat that unless, like, I love Vegemite, but 99% of people who did not grow up with it as children literally cannot eat it, right?
Yeah, you mix it in with macaroni and cheese. It's not bad. It just nice into the sauce.
Oh, you don't have it. You don't have it straight. You're not.
I have had it straight, but like
on a piece of bread.
You need butter for that, though, don't you? Typically,
a little butter, but you got or a little margarine, seed oil
listen,
scamp, and a little butter.
It's like I get it, it's a little intense. I do like it straight within. Sometimes I'm a little weird, but whatever. The Together and Hodl thing was from the 7-year anniversary of CoinEx. They sent me this big box. There's a glass down there, an ETHDAM glass that I was given last year at ETHDAM. And yeah, then there's, let me actually move this for just a second. Just why not like take up some time and do all this. Doge pillow I bought with Dash many years ago from the Free State Bitcoin shop. You can't really find those pillows anymore. They're kind of rare. I have a random Totoro up there for whatever reason. Naomi also gave me that Tor onion, which is nice. And as you can see down there, there's the privacy edition of Vlad Kostia's Bitcoin Takeover magazine that I wrote an article that's in there. So that's kind of what I have so far. Oh yeah, and that thing next to it is a $20,000 pass for Consensus that at some after party someone said, hey, do you want to get into these exclusive after parties? The original owner gave it to me, and I don't want it either. And so I held on to it, and I didn't even get into any parties because I was just being lame and went home. So, yeah, just, not trying to throw anything under the bus, Consensus or anyone under the bus, but sometimes these big dollar, like, tickets, like, the perks, people, they just get passed around anyway, like a cheap hua, but that's a different story. Anyway,
okay, all right.
Fun little tour. I see you have tell me a little bit about those curtains you have. Where are they?
Yeah, when I moved into this room, I was like, they have some very average looking curtains. Look like they would be good in a movie kind of about the 80s or something like that. I feel like you could sell this background as being from the 1980s and nobody would really know the difference, like when you're watching a movie with your parents and they're like, this is that decade, and you're like, what? And they're like, yeah, I remember those lampshades or something. There's like the weird little details that they put in that tip you off as to what time it is. So I don't know, I feel like you could sell that, and I didn't change them, and I'm terrible at home decor and decorating and stuff like that. I don't know, all the stuff that's going on in my mind is like going on in my mind. I'm not too worried about having the best wallpaper.
Yeah, that does make sense. And
I feel like we're on the same page here. You've got kind of the same aesthetic as me. You got a little bit more going on, But you
Yeah.
can see it's still just like the white wall, like
And that's just the just conference stuff. Like almost none. There's a couple personal things from people, but almost everything else came from conferences. I'd have like hijacking Bitcoin and two other things if it was just stuff and not, oh, I saw you at a conference, let me get you this or whatever. It's not there anymore, but I used to also have a SIM card from Dubai, because when you go to Dubai, they just like give you a SIM card when they stamp your passport. And I not putting that shit in my phone, but I wanted to keep hold on to it, and it's there. So at some point I'll have a proper shelf. One of the best simple setups that I've seen is probably Scott Cunningham. Scott C Business is his handle. He's kind of been MIA for a little while, but he did a lot of. He's the guy who like used every crypto social media platform and reviewed it. He did a great review of Hex. He did some good like read.cash reviews back in the day, I remember. Good dude. But he has a fun little shelf. If I actually do like a real setup, I'd probably copy his thing. This spot here is intentionally blank because I was going to get some like banner or something like that put up in there to kind of like do half and half, so it's not just a bunch of crap in my background, but haven't. So, yeah. This shelf also will become very full over the next couple of years as I go to places. Okay, enough random. Let me actually start the show officially, and we get into the stuff because there's a bunch of fun stuff to talk about. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. So, hey everyone, welcome officially. This is the Digital Cash Rundown, episode 186. That means 186 shows in a row, right, that I've done. But more than that, actually, because I've done 186 weeks in a row, because at some point, I have done a special edition, like I do like a free Roger and a free Ross version, for example. And also some days I've just not been there. So like I've been traveling or whatever. So that's been kind of what that is. Joined by the one and only person on the planet whose name is Jeremy. How's it going?
It's going great, man. 2025 is off to a ripper start, I would say. Crypto, we're winning as per usual. I mean, we're always usually winning, but sometimes it looks like a bit, the rebel fighters in Star Wars before they get that last run in and they drop the thing down the mine shaft. Like before that moment, you still kind of know the good guys are going to win, but it's like, oh shit, it's going to be closer than we expected. But now we're like in the scenes where it's on the up and up, and so we're probably going to get a sudden plot twist at some point because things are going too well at the moment, I would say, for crypto. SEC are dropping all their lawsuits. The government's getting dismantled in America, which is basically incidental to us, but it's helping us a lot just because it means we have to do a lot less fighting of that. P2P cash projects are generally doing pretty well. The scam coins are doing pretty poorly. Most of the world is starting to understand the difference between those two things. It's taken a while, but so many people are getting scammed. But it's now at the point where nobody blames that on the somewhat reputable cryptos. They just go, there's scams in crypto and you got scammed. You're an idiot. Like it stopped being like, why doesn't somebody do something? More like, we've all seen this 1,000 times and you got scammed. That was your fault. How did you not research this shit by now?
For sure. And as I mentioned, we lost a great celebrity from public eye relatively recently, Haktua, fame, rest in peace.
Oh, yes.
And as I will remind people, that is the first time I have felt no sympathy for the investors, because when you buy the spit on the dick coin and you expect good things, like out of my hands, this is God's hands at that point. Just what can I do? What can I do, man?
Well, they say experience teaches harshly, but it teaches best. That's the point. If you lost your money in that, that's the wake up lesson, that you got to do a little bit more due diligence on what you're putting your money into, and whatever Although I will tell it's a bit of a I feel like this is a bit of a sad story, but this is my experience recently. I was in an Uber, and I like chatting to the Uber drivers and stuff. They often have really interesting local knowledge of what's going on or whatever. But this guy was not very chatty. I don't know, it was like 20-minute ride or something. I'm sitting in the back. It was a young guy, looked kind of like Russian maybe, and he had two phones. He had one with the map, the Uber app, and then on the other one he just had Binance, and it was just after the Trump coin had come out. And he had obviously put a fat stack onto Trump coin. And I was just, while we're sitting there in the ride, I'm just watching his like net worth evaporate in real time.
That's great.
As the red candle is like dropping, and I don't want to say anything because I don't want to bring up to him.
It's a little awkward.
I'm interested in crypto, like, yeah, and also just that I can see what's going on. But it was such a sad moment because I was seeing, the guy getting the rug pulled on him, like in real time, like all these billions of retail money that gets lost to these grifters. It is real people. And it's people like that who, this guy was clearly, he's having a hard, like he's probably working hard, putting in mega shifts at Uber, and then just was like, look, I just need a way to make it. Let me throw my $1,000 or $2,000 of savings into Trump coin, and that'll moon me to $1 million. But in reality, it all vanished, and that's who is getting hurt by these like predatory schemes, basically.
Yeah, that's the funny part. Like, that's something that, like, the older I get, the more and less empathetic I get at the same time, but for very different people. I get more empathetic for people who are, for example, placed in difficult situations where they have to make tough decisions, like people who bow to regulators and things like that. Like, I get it, dude. I get it. You're after your family, whatever. I understand there's problems. You don't want to lose everything you worked for, those kinds of things. But then I'm much less sympathetic towards the proverbial Uber driver there. Like, I used to think, oh my gosh, this guy. But at the same time, like, I don't think he's a bad person. At some point, there's this, like, understanding of, like, the natural order of things. There are the weak and the strong eat the weak. And in this society, we've sort of, in modern global society, I should say, in most of the developed world and even the developing world, we've kind of created this consensus that we should all take some sacrifices to help the weak still survive and do better, because some of the weak will do very much better, and then some of the strong are temporarily weak, and just it's better for everyone. But outside of that social order, there is the reality that some people deserve to lose their money, not from a moralistic standpoint, but from just the way of the dog eat dog kind of way of things. And so anytime you're like, oh man, I bought low, yay, I made money, it's all because some other guy did the exact fucking opposite. And it's just like, sorry, you roll the dice, something happens. Casinos make tons of money off of, not entirely intelligent people, maybe. Should we shut down casinos? Some say yes, but then they gamble on other things. And there's the game stonk stuff. Then there's just all this stuff. And there's like, how old was this gentleman? Do you know who is in this?
Well, that's the thing. I think he was, he looked young to me. I was thinking, this guy's like 19, 20, 22, something like that, right?
Yeah. So he had like that age appropriate level of net worth, I'm sure, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. I think he probably just worked Uber for a couple months, saved up $1,000 or whatever, YOLO'd it into Trump, and it was all vanishing. So in that sense, you could say maybe he was getting a pretty cheap lesson, if he fucked it up, lost a couple months, but learned, okay, here's how not to get scammed, or maybe don't do that again. Then in a way, like I lost money, like plenty of people, you got to lose money somewhere along the way to making money, right? That's how it goes.
Yeah, and so in that case, I don't really feel too bad for him, because everyone who's young loses money, it's just what you do before you figure it out.
Yeah, that's right.
He didn't have
exactly,
a lot.
Yeah.
So there's two kinds of people. I don't feel bad because his life's ahead of him in this case. In the case of if this was a middle-aged or older person, what are you doing driving Uber? Oh, that's what you're doing. Okay. Yeah, that's a snapshot into again, not this person, but another person's life. There's a snapshot in. This is why you're still driving Uber at 48, and because you make dumb fucking decisions like this. All right, well, apparently someone will be more than happy. Some degen in Bangkok on his little laptop or whatever is just like, oh, dude, I bet I can ride the pump on this, and he just like buys Trump coin. He's like, yep, all right, dump, and he just wrecks this poor guy over there, and he's like, yes, and he's buys some more prostitutes or whatever he does over there, and that guy ate this guy, the predator and the prey.
Although he's gonna give it back though. That's the thing. Like
probably a lot of them.
Yeah, unless you're an insider. Yeah, exactly. You're just gonna give it back, basically.
Yes. Well, for sure. Let me chill Coin ATM Radar, my one lone BCH source of income here. Then we'll get into the fun news headlines. So this podcast is very happily and proudly sponsored by Coin ATM Radar. With Coin, let me scroll all the way up. This podcast, God damn it, I'm really off the rails today. Too much caffeine, maybe. When buying crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place. And unlike an exchange, which could freeze your account, you truly do own all the crypto you buy, not your keys, not your coins. With Coin ATM Radar, you can find crypto ATMs and other services where you can buy or sell cryptocurrencies for cash. On their website, search by coin, address, if the ATM supports selling as well as buying. Again, selling is all I really care about personally for myself. And you can also search by geo area like country, state, or city. And you can also check and compare actual current fees at different ATMs. If you want to find out more, head out to coinatmradar.com, which is coinatmradar.com. And so there we just ran into the failure of the Marxist labor theory of value, because I'm on the other side of the bell curve of how well I do that read, considering how many times I've done it. For a while, I was getting better at it and smoother, and now I'm just getting worse with every single show, screwing up more. So yeah, labor theory of value doesn't work. Just how it is.
It's just authentic. That's what it is. That's what your sponsors are paying you for. I mean, that's the same. My ad reads are pretty scrappy. Like I just throw it in at the end, and but they don't stop coming back. They don't say, "Hey, Jeremy, do you think you could do your ads a bit more professionally?" They know that I'm talking to real people, so I talk like a real person. And, and they love that, right?
So people who viewers of the show will remember a few different times in the last few weeks. I kept on doing the read, even though I didn't know if I was still sponsored by them. And one time I had an email in my inbox from them, and I just hadn't gotten around to reading it about this stuff. And I'm like, well, this podcast may or may not still be sponsored, depending on the content of this email. I still read it. And then I went in there later, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. They just wanted to re-up. That's fine. But so, yeah, that's very good. But so let's hit on this THORChain stuff. So the THORChain drama has been... This has to be show 3 or 4 or more that I've done with THORChain. It's kind of the head story, and not because of the same thing. It's just new stuff keeps happening, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of interesting. But so basically, Bybit, big exchange, got hacked for like $1.4 billion. Pretty crazy. And it was hacked by Lazarus, the North Korean hacker group that does all this stuff. At some point, they wanted to convert Ethereum into Bitcoin, because they stole Ethereum, and they wanted BTC out of this. And they used THORChain and Chainflip and the Maya protocol for a lot of this. And that's kind of where the drama comes out. Just people freaked out, right? Before we get into the nuances of that part, I just would like your opinion or your thoughts on just that first nugget of info, which is they wanted to go from ETH to BTC. Why would you speculate that is?
Well, I think there's even a step before that, which is that the news came out about this hack, right? 1.4 billion hacked from Bybit. I personally never even heard of Bybit, which is not unusual. I don't follow all these exchanges, so I don't know. There's always
have a Bybit shirt somewhere because I said hi to them at a conference, and I think there's
A long time
you know,
ago, or are they
last
relatively
year.
newish? All right. Well, anyway, they got hacked for 1.4 billion, and you know what I thought? I thought, oh, it looks like the market isn't melting down though, because it seemed like this could have been the FTX, right? This could
Yeah,
have been the run back
there's always one.
3 years later. That's right. There's always one. It could have been the snowflake.
Which the next
Not a
story is
snowflake.
going to
Yeah,
that's a lead into the
gonna
next
get
story
to.
after this. But yeah,
Well, there you go. So, right. So, but that's it. I'm just waiting for the next Mount Gox, the next Quadriga, the next FTX, right? There's going to be one. So when that story came out, I was like, oh, here it is, right on time. But
yeah,
it seems like
that wasn't it.
no, that wasn't it. Nobody else cared. Nobody else was like, oh shit. And then they got some loans or whatever dodgy deals they did, because you don't just get 1.4 billion just out of nowhere, right? So they did some deals and they've got the money back, and that's it. But the market didn't really tank based on that, right? When the news first came out, it was like a nothing burger. And then all these people came in and said it's actually bullish for ETH, which I thought was a bit of a stretch. But they said, oh, well, because now Bybit has to buy a fresh stack of ETH, and it's going to take the Lazarus guys a while to sell it off. So it's actually bullish. And I was like, this is insane, Copian. But regardless, I thought it was really, do you know what I mean? It could have been FTX, but it wasn't.
It could have been FTX, and it definitely wasn't, which is weird. And it's funny because I remember Mount Gox, right? I was, man, like, dude, tell me about like trial by fire in crypto, because like I heard about Bitcoin. I got my first for a pizza in 2013, and then like late September. And then somewhere not too long after that, I learned about the Silk Road, and then Ross Ulbricht got nabbed like the next month, and then then the price went from like 100 to like 1,000, and then Mount Gox happened, like all in the space of like my first 6 months of touching this stuff. And so like, I don't know, this is just par for the course, but like I remember with Mount Gox, like I do still know people today who are getting their Gox coins back today. Like that's how crazy it was. It really rocked the space. People use it to character assassinate Roger Ver and stuff like that too, because of the, I looked at them, they appear to be solvent, and just saw that, it's like, I think Homeboy needs to be less trusting of other people, because he's a good man, but a lot of people interacting with him just aren't. But anyway, Bybit is just orders of magnitude larger, but no one really cares. Everyone's like, oh, well, sucks to be them. Let's see if they get their money back. Like, it is kind of weird, a nothing burger.
Yeah, but also crypto has the benefit that there is no bailouts at the end of the day, right? So with FTX, you had this kind of industry contagion effect because they were all in dealing with each other, it all kind of, the whole house of cards kind of fell apart, right? But at the end of the day, somebody has the money, and that person actually has the money, and they have the money. That's it. And there's no bail. And the same with this Bybit stuff. There's no let's do a bailout. There's no let's get a council together of whoever.
It's like your problem, dude.
It's just like you fucked up, yeah. And that's exactly how it's supposed to work, and that is how it works. So in that sense, things are kind of maturing a lot, I think.
Yeah.
Not that there ever has been, crypto bailouts going on to any great degree, but just now it's so common that people are just like, you fucked up, you lost the money, your problem. Like Tuesday.
It's also like a nation state issue now too, because of the whole North Korea part. But yeah, another aspect before I get into that, by the way, we have a comment from the one and only Emergent Reasons, who says, "Hey Jay, could you do your ads for BCH Bull every 5 minutes instead of just at the end?" So
yes, but he's gonna have to up the price by whatever. It's a 2-hour show. 5 minutes, 20 was this 40 times 40 times the dosh, and let's get that going. Yeah,
that sounds good. The next thing I think is interesting, and obviously you and I are on mostly the same page as far as BTC in the state and its utility today and things like that. That being said, I think it's interesting that the hackers decided they wanted to have BTC instead of ETH. And it's interesting for a couple of reasons. I'm sure you have some opinions on why as well. But part of it is I think that so Ethereum is less private by default, but can be used more privately if you use something like Tornado Cash, for example, which, as far as I understand, they still could find a way to do. I know Railgun, which is super private, has this thing called privacy pools, which allows basically it doesn't reveal any information about anyone in there except if someone is from a tainted address, it will just reject them from the contract. Like they won't be able to do it. So everyone if you're already in there, you can do whatever the hell you want. If you're not in there and you're known sanctioned address, you can't go in. So, not entirely censorship resistant, but still good for the average person, sort of a compromise. But the point is, you could probably be more private and hide this stuff better on ETH. But on BTC, there's a lot more, I guess, liquidity, and there's a lot more adoption. And I would say that BTC is like the king of high-level transfers at this point still. Like as far as, all the plebes use case down at the bottom, it's all gone. You wallet Satoshi and get wrecked, whatever. And then as you go up, when you start to hit those big amounts, then it's still like what most people would rather do to send because at that point, the security is considered to be one of the highest. I would argue that it's not necessarily one of the highest, but it is one of the highest, but not the highest. But the security is high for that. But also you start running into all kinds of liquidity issues at those levels. Like if you sent several times, like for example, let's just take BCH, right? You wanted to use that. That would be a significant percentage of BCH's market cap. And that's probably the same value or something of a lot of the BCH that's on exchanges today that's actually liquid in these markets. So you can't just drop this liquidity nuke, and just try to get rid of it, it's just not going to work. So you need to go the highest. At that level, you need BTC for the liquidity. That's one theory. Another theory I have is people trust, and I would say for the very near future, maybe rightly so, they trust that BTC is one of the least likely to be censored chains. And this is where it gets murky, because obviously at the lower levels, everything's custodial and then you can just be censored or whatever. And obviously a lot of the mining pools, et cetera, are like US based, for example, super easy to control. It's very touchy, but for the moment, I think Ethereum has a greater culture around censorship and kind of, doesn't have the cypherpunk roots that BTC has. Even though BTC isn't cypherpunk today, it has those roots. And so, like OFAC there were some OFAC censoring things happening in a BTC pool. I can't remember. Do you remember off the top of your head which one that was?
Was it Mara? I think it was Mara, right?
He's one of those things, yeah. And people freaked out and they kind of had to stop. Whereas the ETH validators had OFAC censorship for up to half of the validators at one point. And
they had it would have peaked at 80%.
Did it?
As far as I know, it's now closer to 60. It dropped off a little bit, but it's still more than half.
And so the Ethereum community just doesn't mind, because they're like, well, we're getting our transactions through. The bad people are getting their transactions through. Just some people don't want to do it. So because of that, they're like, well, there is a chance that if we hold this in ETH long enough, someone will do something at the protocol level to get this away from us. It's least likely in BTC. And so we'll just get there. Do you kind of agree with that general assessment, or do you have any other thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're right about both of those points, especially probably on the liquidity side. Mm-hmm. But mine was more closer to that second point. I immediately thought the culture. I thought, yeah, if you've got $1 billion, ETH has done the DAO fork. They've changed their monetary policy a bunch of times. They did the merge. You just can't put it past the ETH community to say, oh, there's 1 billion, they're bad guys. Let's do a special exception or something. And just that's a risk you just don't want to have. And you just know that on BTC, there's nodes. They can't get rid of inscriptions even though they want to. They can't, change or filter anything even if a bunch of them want to. It's got all the hash power. It's just going to be solid. Like if you asked me to put $1 billion on BTC or ETH for the next 5 years, I would pick BTC in a heartbeat. Like too much longer than that, I would start getting a little, sketchy as to how things would play out. But the next 1 year, 100% BTC
Yeah,
every single time.
because things have been running on inertia with BTC ever since, well, sort of like ever since Satoshi left. First of all, Vitalik's around; he's very involved, and we know what he thinks. So it's a lot
It's more involved than ever recently. I don't know if you've been following all that, but he was stirring the pot with the ETH Foundation. Everyone hated that girl, Aya, whatever her name was, and then he promoted her. He promoted her to the president.
Yeah, he like took over. So now it's a lot of people are very like have a lot of reason to believe that Ethereum could be changed in such a way which could deal with this kind of stuff. Whereas with Bitcoin, Satoshi, I think it's pretty clear his like vision. Hey, Craig, right? And what his vision was, what all this kind of stuff was, and on the other hand, because he's not there and talking, I have a feeling that there'd be a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but some less than cypherpunk or whatever ideas maybe over time he could have developed or whatever. But there's no risk of that. He's perfect because he's, I would say Satoshi is dead as far as could be the actual person is dead. It could be. But like as far as the figure is just not there. He's gone. And so frozen in time, right? It's just kind of like, there's a friend of mine recently was bemoaning turning 30 soon. And I was just like, well, you either do that or you end your own life. Like those are your options. Like you cannot get out of this.
You'd be like one of those rock stars that died at like 28. Okay, yes. They were young and cool forever, but on the other hand, they missed out on like 70 years of being alive and everything that went with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So because Satoshi's not there, there's just a lot of like Satoshi can't screw it up. And so the other thing is a lot of the negative ways in which Bitcoin and its use cases have changed, have been brought about by saying we can't change anything. It's too hard to hard fork. It's too hard to this. It just solidified in this, like everyone runs their own node, super censorship resistant, ideally, supposedly culture. That even at this point, even though by doing nothing, they've become more censorable in a lot of ways. But it's still, in the case of like censoring the protocol to take back North Korean funds, is not going to happen, at least short term. So it's very shrewd decision on that. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I love it. Big check mark to North Korean hackers on that one. Well played, guys.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely not dumb. Now, on the Threadcast I've going on in Leo, there's a comment from Sly, just call me Sly. He says, some randos mentioned the idea of the DPR key being better off buying Monero. Thought that would be interesting to see how that would play out if that were the case. Well, let's just see. CoinGecko.com. What is the market
cap? Like 5 billion?
It's 3.8 billion. So
okay, they're 25% of the total market cap.
Yeah, 25% of the total market cap, and Monero has notoriously been delisted a lot in the last few years, meaning the liquidity is just like not there. And so you'd have to do so much like peer-to-peer, but also like if these are North Korean hackers, there's how much access do they have to like the peer-to-peer global markets? They have some rando in like, freaking Zimbabwe who's just like, I'll sell you Monero for ETH, and you do a P2P thing on like no ones or whatever. Like, nah, it's a giant pain in you can't get it to Monero is the point. So, and there aren't any good dexes for Monero right now. I mean, there are some peer-to-peer kind of like atomic dex things, but as far as an AMM, an automated market maker, where you dump into the pool and it goes whoop into something else, there might be Surai decks in this year, maybe. I don't know how far that is along, but you got THORChain, you got the Maya protocol, you got Chain Flip, and for the cross-chain big ones, that's it, kind of. So those are their options, and they're like, THORChain, most liquidity, go. So that's where we go. So let's throw this Tevano is a post here on the screen. Now, I don't know Tay. I do know people who do know her personally. She's a very competent security researcher, right? And as far as who like does a lot of on-chain analysis and traces all these kinds of things professionally. That being said, I am not a fan of her viewpoints. So she posts this this stats board that shows like THORChain volume going through the roof because of this thing. With the commentary, this is a fucking problem. And yeah, so do you think that's a problem?
No, not really. I mean, I think this is just what we're seeing from the growth of cryptocurrency in a certain sense, right? The whole ethos, and everybody always talks about it like uncensorable. You know, you've got to kind of understand that the black market comes with the white market. Money is just money in both contexts. If you're discriminating, it's kind of like the law, you know, you kind of, okay, certain people who have a certain political viewpoint might say we should definitely intervene more in X, Y, or Z, like people getting ripped off and scammed, like we were talking about before. But ultimately, the sort of mature view of it is, look, a lot of stuff's just going to happen, and you just kind of got to let that slide. Like, you can't be intervening, because as soon as you're intervening on one thing, you kind of got to intervene on everything, right? So this is what it is. We've now got a lot of people in crypto who have heard about that, and they've either preached it themselves but not really thought about it, or they just don't even believe in that stuff. And then that runs up against the reality of a situation like this, where some people are really like, North Korea, bad guys. Like, we need to stop them. We need to do all this stuff. What about American interests? Or what about the fact that they're bad people, according to me, or, you know, or whatever, right? And then they want to intervene. They want to censor things. They want to reverse transactions or blame someone or do something, you know, run around panicked, when it's just kind of like, well, if they had stolen a bunch of gold bars, there would be nothing you could do, just the gold, but they've got the gold now, and that's kind of how it is.
Of gold.
Yeah, that's right. That's kind of how it is. So being like stressed, like, oh, we've got to do something, or especially as well, like panicking about, oh, well, other people will judge us. Well, it's actually the other way around. People are not going to judge crypto for this, exactly because everyone knows it's just neutral. It's not Bitcoin's fault or BTC's fault or ETH's fault if some North Korean hackers have some, but in the same way, it's not the fault of the internet if they have an internet connection. And everybody just knows that. And they know that because we don't intervene. If there was intervening going on, then it would be like somebody could decide and it could become political. But it doesn't, so people just treat it that way.
For sure. And I'm reminded of Alex, the founder of the Maya protocol. He's very aligned on all that thinking. And he, first of all, calls it neutral infrastructure. He says that we need neutral infrastructure for a free society, and it's great. And he also likened it to a highway. He says someone steals money, you don't blame the highway that someone drove down on it. When you just chase them across the highway or block them off at the other end and get them. It's, you don't blame the highway. It's kind of interesting because for all this stuff, like someone hacked, these guys who are geopolitical enemies of the U.S. and a lot of the West, and why that is that's a giant political discussion of like this situation where you have this nation that you have no leverage against to say, because if these hackers had been somewhere in Germany or something, you'd cooperate with German law enforcement, you'd figure it out, and you'd get those guys. Or even Russia, maybe not, right? Russia maybe 10 years ago, not today. You couldn't do that. Now with North Korea, they're just safe because they're government sanctioned. You can't yell at the government and say, we need that money back. Well, you can't. No leverage. So no one cares about that. For some reason, no one's like, everyone's, whatever, stuff happens. No one, like, Bybit, how Bybit got hacked. I'm sure there's some consternation around security practices. That's XYZ, or whatever. There's a little bit of that. That's a small story. Everyone's coming after THORChain for money laundering. And to the point where Chainflip, which is I would say the most direct competitor to THORChain, and not just like Maya's it's like a friendly arm of it, sort of. They're very similar, very collaborative. And in fact, like Maya chooses to add support for chains that THORChain doesn't explicitly, so that the two together can work, like that. Chainflip's a little bit more, I wouldn't say antagonistic, but more competitive. They added in transaction filtering at the protocol level, not just the interface level. So they managed to they've been stamping out all of this stuff. So they're acting a lot more like a business in that case, right? But so the whole money laundering thing is kind of interesting because it doesn't really constitute that. And so I'm going to play that little clip from Bake Profit, or Already Sold, which is hilarious. I love the internet sometimes. He made like a 2-minute video that's pretty entertaining about exactly how this thing works and about how it isn't money laundering, basically. Let me just put this on the screen and turn it on. Fun little music behind it is a little like pointer with a glove on. He's tapping on it. He says, "It's not money laundering. You're dumb AF." And then takes to the FinCEN website. What is money laundering? And then underlines, through money laundering, the criminal transforms the monetary proceeds derived from criminal activity into funds with an apparently legal source. Tap, 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 tap. This is definitely not happening. And he goes to RuneScan, and he shows all the volume, and he clicks on this one right here. And while it's waiting, he's jiggling the thing around. He just says, "Oh, inbound, outbound swap." It says, "Destination," and he shows this BC1, whatever, SegWit address for Bitcoin. And then he switches to Familiar Cow, who's a THORChain dev, saying, "I put together a quick tool for the Bybit team. It checks the chain against Bybit's associated address API and flags all swaps associated with their addresses. Use this to easily track where the BTC is going." And then there's this THORChain hack transaction tracker that shows all the hacked addresses, all the receiving addresses for everything. And it even shows like the URL right there. And then it switches to Eric Voorhees, who says, "Unlisted funds in crypto, blah, blah, blah." He just does this big thing that basically just says a lot of stuff we've been saying. So, all with a fun little sort of jazzy music behind it. But I thought that was like a kind of sassy, fun little way to get it, to make the point that, yeah, this is ridiculous kind of calling money laundering.
Well, it's just, you got to understand that nobody's really arguing over money laundering. This is not the Supreme Court, right? People are not in there with their 20 years of legal education and their dictionaries and their whatever, right? Mm-hmm. What is happening is, this is money laundering, THORChain, please stop it, is just, I don't like this. But you can't just say, I don't like this, because everyone will say, well, that's invalid. That's not an argument for anything. So you have to find a way to wrap it up in something that sounds like there's a big bad thing going on. Somebody please intervene. So that's the excuse. And it's money laundering because that's, again, with no analysis, seems like a good label to put on it. If North Koreans are involved and money, that's money laundering. Okay, the average person probably, okay, fair enough. And then it's THORChain, probably because that's the weakest point of the system, like you were saying. Nobody's going to blame BTC and say, BTC, do anything about it, because it's just established nobody can and nobody will. So it's pointless. They're screaming at the sky. There's been thousands of these issues before and it's never worked. So people have given up on trying to pressure that, Same with ETH for the most part. Probably not really the right place to be directing your anger, or not the most productive anyway. North Korean hackers, you can send them a nasty Twitter message. They're just going to ignore you. The American government, same deal. Like it's like, who might conceivably bend if I scream at them? It seems like it's going to be THORChain. So that's all logical to me.
Yeah, and the thing is, I have to, before showing the next couple of things, a little bit of nuance in the way THORChain and the other AMM dexes like that work is they are decentralized, right? Which means no central party controls them. I would say they're not entirely permissionless, which those two are different concepts, where permissionless is just anyone can use it for whatever you want. You can't stop them. And you need a decentralization in order to be able to guarantee permissionlessness. But in this case, it's like a decentralized exchange, which means it's harder to, there's a lot less. So as far as I know, there's no ability to reverse or block transactions on the individual level at all. There's just no functionality built in. There is an ability to pause trading either entirely or on specific routes through any node in case of an emergency a few nodes can vote and it pauses it, and then the majority of nodes can then vote whether to unpause or to continue that, right? So there was the Ethereum to Bitcoin trading route, right? The Ethereum pool was paused and then overridden. And I think it was then attempted to repause and then overridden again. So basically there's been this fight back and forth between people saying we need to stop this trade route from happening because of what's going on. And then people saying, no, we need to keep things flowing. Like so basically there's been
this is our problem basically. And I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that it sounds like on the whole thing, it sounds like a functioning system. Some people are like, let's pause this. The majority, they have a small, like, it makes sense that you could have a small amount of people, at least if you're going to have a system like this. I'm not saying you should always have this system, but if you're going to have this kind of system, it makes sense that a small amount of people who figure out something is wrong can stop things kind of preemptively. But then it also makes sense that once everyone else has had time to react, they can say, we're not going to be held hostage by 5 or 10% of people or whatever, right? So it makes perfect sense to me.
It's a little distinct from a Bitcoin style system because like Bitcoin and the other ones like that and a lot of proof of stake chains as well that are just basic transaction type chains don't have any pausing functionality built in. The only thing is miners and validators can choose to not include certain transactions in blocks. However, that just means that they get included by blocks from other ones that don't explicitly do this. So if 2/3 of miners of mining hash power in Bitcoin Cash, for example, choose to censor a transaction, that just means that the other third will do it. And that's kind of it. There's tons of technical nuance that goes beyond this, but this is a very simple thing. In these kinds of systems, in terms of like pausing a chain or something like that, it's like the 2/3 or whatever it rules. The 1/3 can't just say, well, we're going to do it anyway. So it's a little bit less like fully on permissionless, but that's why we have the actual chains we're using to begin with, right? The actual permissionless transactional chains. And that's also why you have like atomic dexes and stuff where you and a friend or you and someone else say, I want to swap this for this price, and you hit a button and it goes zoop and no one can stop that. But it's just not as well oiled of a machine. Like it's literally an exchange, like a centralized big exchange, except a decentralized version of that. And I think that's hugely valuable to have. But when using it, we have to realize there's different trust assumptions than just using a censorship resistant transaction chain. So,
well, it's a win for THORChain just on the point that they have the liquidity and that the trades are going through, right? So in both of those areas, their product is being vindicated as the right tool for the job from the point of view, obviously, of the North Korean hackers. And it's kind of making a bigger point about cryptocurrency infrastructure. I'm not, heavily in the camp for or against THORChain. I mean, I think it's good. I think it's a good project, and I think they could carry on. But I've never done a huge deep dive on it. I've used it a little bit, but I haven't done a huge deep dive on it. But it sort of vindicates their project, right? Because it works, and the North Korean hackers use it because the liquidity is there, and because they can make a swap that they want to make, and that's it.
Yeah, for sure. And also, the way they have things structured is very different from a lot of wallets, in that most wallets are just how they use any kind of cryptocurrency. So THORChain interfaces, first of all, can and do implement like transaction filtering or whatever in terms of not for the most part, but like the bare minimum, the OFAC type stuff. And so if you try to go to thorswap.finance or thorwallet.org or shapeshift.io, whatever, with like sanctioned funds, it'll just won't let you swap through like the actual interface. Now,
that's kind of a shame, but also the North Korean hackers, they're like,
yeah,
we don't care, we'll knock together our own script and just do it that way, right?
Yes, and that's the thing is, the way you actually the actual way you transact on these networks is through memos. Basically, you send to a pool with some op return data that says, I want to swap for this other asset, and here's my receiving address in the op return field, and you send it. So you want to raw dog it like that, you can. And that's probably what they're doing right now, because all the interfaces have been like, no, we're not doing this stuff. So you can just, and by the way, funny enough, when the Maya protocol first started, I tried to do something like this, like with because they didn't have interfaces working yet. So I tried to raw dog with a memo, and I screwed something up, and it brought the whole network down with a bug. So there was that in like the first day. Like, whoop, we had a chain halt. Community effective immediately. I will no longer be contributing to THORChain. I'll blah blah blah. Thank you for your support. Community effective immediately. I will no longer be contributing to THORChain. I'll blah blah blah. Thank you for your support. He was more or less. It's hard to really tell. It's hard to really quantify, but more or less kind of the lead developer of THORChain. There were JP was the founder. He kind of stepped away. Chad Barraford was sort of his co-founder / replacement. He's sort of stepped away. The Nine Realms is a dev group that sort of took over most of the development since then. And Pluto was kind of the more senior of the Nine Realms people, from my understanding. So he decided to step away over this. And then TCB, who's just a whale who ran a lot of these nodes, for example, he just said the guy is effectively the lead dev for a while. Will be moving out of THORChain. As I mentioned yesterday, I will also see myself out if we don't rapidly adopt a solution to stop North Korea flows. So this will likely be one of my last posts on the THORChain subject. There's a lot of conversation you'd say about, this individual as well, but basically it seems like so you have a decentralized structurally decentralized system. Unfortunately, a lot of the people involved with THORChain in the beginning, like way too many, were US based and doxed people. And at that point, that makes it like the FBI is breathing down your neck when this stuff's happening, and you're like, oh shit, like I can't just say it's out of our hands. It's like, ugh. So probably, if I were to assume, Pluto and this TCB fellow, did not like the risk anymore of being associated with this, like the real risk, not just, well, maybe things will get, no, like I don't want to go to jail in this year, so we're going to see ourselves out. And so it sucks to have a loss like that, but at the same time, everything's still running along, everything's still working, and so it's kind of like one of those, it just harkens back to that Uber driver of like the hard lessons. It's just like, you got to get wrecked at some point. And at some point you're getting wrecked by like saying, oh, we did VC money in the US and we have so many node operators with their collateral in the US. Maybe we should plan adversarially if we ever expect to be like relevant and decentralized at the global stage.
Yeah, well, like you said, I mean, it's just speculation. But if you think they were feeling the heat, either like actually, as in things actually started to happen in that direction, or they just felt like the risk was getting a bit high, I'm out. You think it was more that rather than them having the kind of angle that we mentioned before about, I don't really like North Koreans, America first, we need to put a stop to the bad guys. Because, there's a lot of people who have those kind of views too, right? So I guess without knowing the context of these individuals, it's hard for me to say, which one it would be. But in either case, it's the same story. It vindicates THORChain as actually working, and they're clearly going to have to change things up a little bit if their major contributors and so forth are leaving. But I think it's not really worth it for them to say, these big people are leaving. Actually, they're right, guys. We got to figure out how to add some censorship, because then you've just undermined the whole basis of the project, right? When somebody is doing a quit like this, it's kind of like, breaking up with someone or something. It's kind of like, well, even if it's kind of painful, it's probably for the best, because if we bend on this to keep you aboard, then that just screws up our value prop in the long term, and the whole reason everyone started doing this together to begin with, right? So.
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes back to the whole, their big, I guess, things they've said about this, their objections have not been like, well, we think we love censorship. It's a lot of been we live in the real world, and in the real world, this is an actual problem. And so there's a lot of that real worldism.
Real world talk.
Yeah, real world, like, I'm a real worldist. Like a lot of
I love the real world though, because that when that chat is coming out, that things are starting to get a bit real. It's exactly the same as when someone online is talking about how they were, doing whatever they were doing. They were making millions of dollars, or somebody's just making some outrageous claims, and then somebody comes in and just says like, "Look, bro, we all know you're fronting for the internet," and they just get massively ratioed because it's so obvious. I love those moments.
Yeah, the real world. The problem with this sort of real is, first of all, whenever people say things don't work like that in the real world, sometimes it's an accurate and necessary comment. A lot of times it's capitulation. It's just like, I mean, I'm tapping out. I don't want to do this.
Exactly. That's right. That's the other way, because the problem is it comes down to exceptions. That's why if somebody's like, oh, I'm a 6'7" NBA player, those people exist, and there are some on Twitter, or I'm a power lifter, so let me just explain to you the mechanics of this, whatever. There are exceptions. So, but you can't be fronting as if you're one of those exceptions unless you have actual proof, right? Yeah. But then it goes the other way around, which is if then somebody says, "Oh, what you think? There are people who are 6'7" and in the NBA," and then some guy chimes in, and he's like, "Yo, that's me, bro." Yeah. So it's always the exceptions that get you. So in this case, it's kind of like, oh, well, the real world. That's kind of like they're in that exception camp where crypto is about censorship resistance, but now the weight is starting to fall on them, so they kind of have to tap out. It's not like, therefore, the whole censorship thing doesn't work. It's like, in my case,
yes,
this isn't going to fly.
It's kind of funny how like we don't live in the real world. That's my comment on that, because let me throw up this meme.
People live in their own world.
Yeah. Let me hit this meme that I put up, which I repurposed Tavano's like, this is a fucking problem thing, except that I put the Bitcoin white paper right there. Peer-to-peer electronic cash system. This is a problem. Yeah, according to this person, permissionless finance is a problem, right? It's funny how it's just like, oh, well, in the real, like, either like, this is a problem, we need to do something about this, or in the real world, you can't. Somehow, for the last 16 years, Bitcoin has been in the real world, and it's kind of at the top of the real world now, and somehow no one is saying a peep about trying to censor Bitcoin. It's not just, not just like the North Korean kind of realism of, well, this gives us our highest chance of having like high liquidity moves that won't get stopped. It's also everyone else has just sort of accepted that you're not going to censor Bitcoin, which I think is a little, as we're about to go into in just a second, foreshadowing, maybe a little naive. But at the same time, people just accepted that this thing is. Why can't you just accept the same for THORChain? Accept that it's just a decentralized thing. It's going to move. It's like, oh, it's because it's small potatoes. You can bully the small potatoes. And that's once it survives 2 or 3 of these and is still there, people are going to then they're going to be like, the Maya protocol in the real world, you need to, like, shut up.
Exactly,
yes.
But THORChain has to pass that test, though. That's the point. BTC, Bitcoin, or cryptocurrency in general, Ethereum, whatever, have got that reputation, have got that clout through proof of work, right? Through the fact that there has been all these failures and all these people who wanted to censor it and all these times, and at the end of the day, nothing happened. And eventually you cry wolf enough, people stop listening, right? So now there's just nobody who can cry wolf about that.
Yeah.
So THORChain has to pass that test, because people are going to FUD it or say, let's do censorship or whatever. And if the community bends now, then that's what I was saying before. Then you've undermined the whole premise, and they're just inviting it to come back next time. But if they just tough it out, they say, okay, we lost a couple investors or people who were, couldn't handle it, their own personal circumstances, etc. But the protocol keeps running, then they'll be more resilient next time. Whereas if they fold, it's like a short-term fix for their problem, but it's a long-term problem, and it's the other way around if they don't.
Yeah, it is exactly the whole thing of, and this is like the last kind of thing I'll say on it, but also like the I've been very supportive of the THORChain community during these times, and this is the one snarky kind of thing I might say is Satoshi built for like guerrilla warfare, basically. Like no one, I wouldn't say no one knows who Satoshi is, but I don't. Most people don't know. Like it's not public. Mined from zero, no VC money, really resiliently built, and just like that's why it's still there. He built in a world where he thought people would try to like take this down and destroy it, because historically that had been happened with all these old school digital currencies or whatever. So he's building for maximum resistance in the face of like a nation state level threat. That was the idea. And that's kind of what this is. This is freedom money. You're supposed to upset the apple cart a little bit in building this. And at somewhere along the way, we got tech bros who got in love with this idea. Oh, this is so cool. But then they didn't they didn't think adversarially when they're building it. They're like, oh, we'll raise all US VC money. We're going to run all these nodes here. Let's go THORChains, woo, and to Valhalla and all this kind of crap, hyping each other up. Then they get a little bit of pressure and then they like bitch out and say, oh, what are we going to do? It's just like, no one's gone to jail yet. Like Ross Ulbricht went to jail. Roger Ver went to jail. Samurai people went to jail. Like the Tornado Cash people went to jail. Lots of people gone to fucking jail for this freedom money thing. Let's, fingers crossed it's not that many more, right? At this point, like, what did you think was going to happen to build a permissionless system? Someone doesn't like it to be permissionless. And I think they didn't really think it through to today very well, and they have to do that. On the other hand, the Maya protocol, which again, technologically almost identical to THORChain, but the founder and the founding team are all Mexican. They're not from, as nice of a part of the world in terms of like, socioeconomic whatever. No VC money. No one is doxxed. No, I mean, the founder shows his face. You could figure it out kind of, but like no one's doxxed. They don't have bank accounts. I know this because I've done business with them, and you kind of had to like figure out like workarounds and stuff. They're adversarially built, and they're just completely not like no one in Maya is thinking the same way that some people, again, not most people, but some people at THORChain are thinking. They're just, in fact, the founder just said like, look, I come from a part of the world where you don't trust your government. You understand you're getting screwed over and over. You don't trust that they will have your best interests at heart. There's no way, like, comply or like the lists. He wrote this essay on lists about who's on the list and who isn't on the list of things. And you don't trust the list because people can be put on the list, who are not criminals.
Or just at the right
who
at the
determines
wrong
the
moment.
list. And so we just want neutral infrastructure. And he just said, like, if the Maya community and the nodes vote to do censorship and stuff, I'm selling all my stuff and I'm leaving immediately. And best of luck. Just saying, like, this is not what we do. And like, it's the kind of like balls from being like in a struggle in a part of the world where you see the struggle. Whereas then there's a lot of this like less struggle into the THORChain DNA that now is being forced to struggle and is wholly unprepared. And that, I must say, THORChain as a whole, I think, is relatively prepared. There are just some elements that weren't, and those elements just have to be shaken out. The rune price is probably not going to be super great for a while, and then let's see if they survive. It's still going to be one of the greatest inventions in crypto for a few years, I think. Just got to get through it. Got to be resilient.
Yeah. No, I do like this kind of dynamic though, because it's just one of those things where, like, at the end of the day, it's not a movie, that's it. Once the real world comes knocking, that's when you really find out like who's going to fold and who isn't,
Yeah.
So
it's just at some point, like, I've seen it time and time again of some people like, oh, well, how am I going to pay my rent with this stuff? And figure it out. Oh, but the volatility, we need a stable coin. Maybe you do, but if you don't have a stable coin, what are you going to do? No, I'm just going to live on fiat. Well, exactly. There we go. Like, it just, this whole...
But it's how everything works. It starts with the hardcore who are serious, and then that becomes cool because it's edgy and different. And then some other people come along who want to jump on the clout of being cool, but they aren't actually that hardcore. And when push gets to shove, things get a little bit dicey, and then that waters it down over time until eventually, because then there's another wave of people even further down, and then the hardcore people eventually have to do their own thing. And this is what we were talking about a little bit before the show. Like, cryptocurrency used to be badass. It did. It was cool. It was edgy. and it was, because it was dangerous and non-conformist, right? Contrarian. And then now there's so many people who are in cryptocurrency who want to just try and make some money on Trump coin or something like that. No idea about the history, no idea about where it came from, no risk of, like you said, going to jail. Came in once they were the 10 million.
Well, listen, I will stop you there. I would say no risk of going to jail because Haktua is scared for her freaking life right now. But
yeah, okay, well,
anyway, go on.
No, but the people who are even just trading on your shit. Back in the day, you couldn't even freaking use BTCE without feeling like you were about to get your door kicked in. So
yes, and I will say there are some friends of mine who are from the 2010 era of Bitcoin, etc., who, for example, had a lot of nights they stood up, they were sweating because they're like, I have all this Bitcoin from sketchy exchanges that just don't exist and have no record of existing other than forum posts. How am I going to file this on my taxes, not go to prison? Actually trying to I BTC'd too hard back in the day. And then other people I know were like, I know a friend who got paid in Bitcoin, and then he tried to use the Shapeshift interface to swap and it got blocked. And it's this person who paid them was like, again, from the 2010 to 2013 era. That's where their coins are from. They weren't illegally or illicitly gotten or anything, but just because of I don't know, that was a sketch exchange. Some people laundered through that, anything. It's just like, oh, you can tell what era you're from based on the coins you have sort of in your thing. Like you could not be a crypto user at all before, I would say, like 2017, maybe even later, and be be out of a legal gray area, I would say. Even if you were straight laced, it was just new, raw. You didn't know what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what I'm saying. Where I think there's going to be maybe over the next couple of years, we're really going to see it. There's going to be sort of like a rebranding almost, where parts of cryptocurrency are going to find a new word and be like, that's us.
Yeah. Maybe it's like Web3 and
we're
DeFi.
not cryptocurrency. Yeah, there was Web3 and DeFi, but that was going in the other direction. That was the name for the people watering it down, not the
that's
people
what I'm
getting
saying.
more hardcore.
Maybe crypto will stay crypto, and that'll be the hardcore one, and people will talk about modern finance or some nonsense. I don't know. But speaking of like the other, it's just like, remember the Bitcoin not crypto push? Speaking of scams.
Yeah.
So
they've kind of given up on that, by the way. I mean, there's still a bit of that, but
they tried until they couldn't get the government to agree, and then they stopped.
Yes. Yeah.
But speaking of that fellow, the one and only Mr. Michael Saylor says, sell a kidney if you must, but keep the Bitcoin. Okay. And then the odd hero of the hour in this thing, Mr. Peter Schiff, said, first he told people to max out their credit cards and mortgage their homes to buy Bitcoin. Now you're telling them to sell off their organs. Have you no shame? And it's just like, damn, like, wasn't it crazy? Do you remember when Peter Schiff was just wrong? Why is he like right?
Well, but he was never he was never just wrong though. That was the thing. He was always like 85 or 90% there, where he would make all these arguments about sound money, about the government printing fiat, about yada, yada, yada. And it would like all be correct up until the moment that he got to Bitcoin and said, this is never going to work. And then ironically, he proved somewhat to be correct about that. He was still wrong about Bitcoin the whole time. But after BTC became a HODL only digital gold, then he was like, see, I'm vindicated. I knew that this wasn't going to work as a currency. And you're like, yes, but you skipping over deliberately or not, mostly deliberately. He's been around long enough that if he'd been paying attention, he could have followed all the ins and outs of this, but he didn't. So instead, he just is like, it's one of those cases where he doesn't want to look into it more, because if he does, he'll find out that he was actually wrong. So he wants to ignorantly kind of say, oh, well, I was right. It was HODL only gold. And then when now he's even started talking about Monero and different coins, because he's finally figured out that he can say, yeah, you guys aren't good. Look at these other cryptocurrencies that are currencies.
Yeah.
I don't know at what point he's going to say, wait, I'm actually in support of those other cryptocurrencies. At some point he'll get to that.
I think, there's the RWA kind of craze right now, the real world asset thing. And where, like you're tokenizing real estate and things like that. And I think that once they figure out a good way of doing that with like precious metal storages in ways that make sense, I think he's going to be on board. He's oh yes, this works for my bags. But to give Schiff some credit for a second, first of all, Schiff is what got me into crypto because he had that gold-backed debit card, and I was like, oh my gosh, you mean I can live on sound money? This is awesome. And like, I've been trying to do the same shit since long before I heard about crypto. So kudos for that. He has been like has bank destroyed and stuff by the the government for trying to let people have sound money, and his father, very Ross Ulbricht-esque, died in prison because of this because of standing up for this kind of stuff, for financial freedom and stuff. So lots of props to Peter. On the other hand, Saylor, selling kidneys, bro. That's a little desperate. And so switching to this thing on the MicroStrategy chart. It's all quiet for my MicroStrategy friends who said I can't understand complex company financials. It's not complex. It's actually just a simple Ponzi scheme, which it's funny. That kind of goes back to the whole, the understand Bitcoin people. They're like, you don't understand Bitcoin. Anyone who says that, 99% of the time, let's say, doesn't understand it either and uses that like obfuscation to just be like, cover up the Ponzi. So it's kind of the same thing, right?
Well, it is, but also I personally kind of dislike these kind of tweets because they're the same as the people going the other way. Like when the price of BTC goes up, all these people come out of the woodwork and say, see, I told you the whole time BTC was fine. You were just fudding. Nothing was wrong with it. To the moon. All the fudders proved wrong, etc. And then when the price is going down, all the people come out who say, see, I told you it was all going to fail. It's all going to zero. You were wrong the entire time. And it's just like a cycle that just alternates back and forth. When the real thing, of course, is in the middle, which is like, is cryptocurrency going away? No. Is there a lot of scammy elements?
Yeah.
Yes. Like, is the market very volatile? Yes. Does the price sometimes pump and make a bunch of people rich? Yes. Does the price also crash and a lot of people, feel like they were vindicated, even if it's only in the 2-year time frame rather than the 200-year time frame? Yes, also, like it's just like neither of these takes is right, but there's just two groups of people who really want to just jump on the train of I was right the whole time, rather than coming to the middle position. They just never get there.
And that's why, like, because I do think about the permanence of my posts, right? As far as, unfortunately, to be, to get through to people, you have to be a little sensationalist. You have to be a little bit of humorous, a little, this is such a scam. A little bit, like crank it up a little bit. And some of my best work is because I've said harsh things like that. Now Forbes wants to quote me, not because I had a nuanced balance take, but because I'm saying, see, there it is. It's a scam. And then they get it. That being said, I have been a critic of this MicroStrategy stuff from the beginning, all the way up. I've been like,
it is definitely a scam. And all of what I said before aside, it's a scam.
Yes, yeah. And I definitely, but that being said, I also will be a little bit more aggressive on the way down because, first of all, it feels good. It feels better to be right than pre-right. And also, that's where the engagement is. No one's going to be saying it's just, no one cares on the way up. But the point is, yes, that is very true about people say like people are capitalists they capitalize on trends. They're like, it's going up, it's going down. And it's just like, I'm annoyed by, like, I have to say, I am a, not frequent, but I am a user of Monero. And even though I've clashed with some people in the community, it's one of the more solid pieces of tech out there as far as like for what things I care about. It works. That being said, I'm annoyed at all the new Monero maxis who used to be Bitcoin maxis until like 2 months ago that are now all of a sudden being like, oh, it's a scam. Monero is cypherpunk. I'm like, where were you for the last 10 years? Like,
this is that rebranding that I'm talking about. It's just going on in the mind of a small minority of people.
And again,
people never understand. Somebody else was there first. That's the thing. People love to jump on a bandwagon once they click with it, and they're like, I can't believe all these idiots that don't understand the realization I had in the last month. And it's like somebody else was telling you the same thing 10 years ago. You didn't listen to it.
And they're annoying, but I'll allow it. Like I take whenever you're ready, I'll take you, right? That being said, people who say, yeah, like for example, Ryan X Charles, he came out and said some things about, Craig Wright was not Satoshi, it was scammed, all this kind of stuff. But he said I was wrong, and therefore I'm giving him no shit, none at all. I'm just like,
yeah, he was great. He was the model. If you want to know how to do it, how to take a public L, that was it. That was it. He nailed it.
And he was the perfect version, but even an imperfect version of just someone says, I thought Bitcoin was, I was wrong, blah, blah, blah. And that's all they say. Just
I've rethought this or that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or then there's no shit. If you don't say that, if you just conveniently be like, oh, Monero's the cypherpunk, whatever, welcome. But also, I'll give you a little bit of shit. I'll give you, where was this attitude?
You've got to acknowledge
where was this attitude a few years ago, mate? But like, I'm not going to give him a lot of shit. Just a little bit. That's the price you have to pay, is to let people know you were wrong, though. You were wrong, mister. Like, all right.
Yeah, of course, of course. Well, because it's just dishonest, basically. It's not dishonest to change your opinion. Anybody can change their opinion at any time. You have new experiences, you learn new information, you change your opinion. That's fine. Nobody in the world had the same opinions for their entire life. It's just nonsense. And also, the dishonest part is where you don't admit it, and then you try and be like dunking on your like former opinion or something, or making a big point out of it without having first gone through the phase of, yeah, but I was wrong. Like, you've got to take that public out. You just have
absolutely. In the vein of things that, like, this could be another 2-hour podcast discussion if we say any more about this. But when Mike Hearn, which by the way, he was on like the CoinGeek live stream with Kurt Wuckert recently. And I really need to check that. I did not watch it. Again, I don't like to show like BSV outlets and stuff, but if it's Mike Hearn, you're gonna watch it, right? Just want to see him.
Yeah, I'm
when
gonna
Mike
watch
Hearn,
that.
When he rage quit, or when he left Bitcoin, I didn't understand, and I thought he was wrong. Like, this dramatic guy. Nah, it's gonna be fine. I was wrong about that. And then I left. I thought that Bitcoin's design, or the way it was sufficient to be like censorship resistant long term. I was wrong about that. There's some other stuff. I then thought, let's see, what else was I wrong? I thought that the DAO is a solution. If you had like a governance and voting system, and I don't not think that, but I now don't think that's sufficient. I think there's other stuff, and I have not completed my thought process on what I think is right. But those are some things I've been wrong about. Also, I was wrong about I'd have to look back at my actual predictions, but I think I was wrong on, at least in my mind, I was wrong on the time frame of BTC's collapse. It went up way longer than I thought, and in retrospect, I should have just been like, yeah, it's going to take a while. And so now I'm trying to be, even with like the MicroStrategy thing, which is one of the easiest, like BitConnectiest things to like dunk on, I still want to be reasonable in how I do it. And the reasonable stuff is, well, something's crashing, someone's losing money. That is 100% sure. Now the question is who, and that's what I don't know. Is it going to be Michael Saylor loses everything? Like MicroStrategy crashes, he loses everything. So here's the thing: is MSTR going to crash? Saylor has a big pot of Bitcoin at the end of things, so he kind of used the dumb plebs as like exit liquidity to just get more Bitcoin at the end of the day. Is that going to happen? Is it going to be the other way around, where he just pumps up his company and gets people to buy, buy all this Bitcoin and then whatever, and then he just ends up selling all his Bitcoin in one go to pump up MicroStrategy stock, and now he has a big profitable company that did nothing other than wreck the Bitcoin noobs? Is he going to do that? Or is he going to have the hubris to not like understand where to get off the train, and both are going to crash a little bit? Not entirely, but both are going to crash. MicroStrategy is also going to zero or whatever, temporarily at least, like it did before. It's going to go down, and then Bitcoin's going to go down. He's going to lose all his nonsense, but Bitcoin is going to be okay for another few years at least. I don't know. Which of those three paths do you predict?
Ooh, it's so hard though, because when you started, I was like, and then as you said each one, I was like, no, I can see that. So I think there's a good odds of all of them, and that's kind of what makes Michael Saylor so interesting in the industry as well too, is because firstly, all these idiots pumped him up, because he was saying what they wanted to hear, and because the price was moving with his statements, so they were loving it. And now some of them are starting to have a bit of a hangover of like, wait, why did we promote this guy? And now he's like saying that we shouldn't fund the devs. And he's saying that the government's going to take, which was what he was always saying, but they had, selectively muted that in their mind when it was favoring them. And now they're kind of like, what are we actually doing here, guys? So I think kind of both. I honestly could see any of those three scenarios happening, because I don't think even Michael Saylor knows what he feels like in 6 months. If he feels like, oh, time to dump the BTC and just exit into MicroStrategy, I think we could see that. If you time to dump the MicroStrategy, enter into BTC, I could see that. I could see some kind of political thing. Like, I could see him ending up in jail. He gets arrested. His pot of BTC is all in Coinbase. And then Coinbase are just like, here you go, government. Here's Michael Saylor's, they cook up something that he illegally misacquired it or whatever the hell. And then the government's just like, thanks, we'll have that. It's nearly 500,000 BTC, you know that? That's crazy. 500,000 BTC, just him. And he's like, not your keys, not your coins, and it's all on Coinbase.
Well, that's where things get really like. So here's the thing: if I were to bet on this, if I had to bet, I would bet the outcome where MicroStrategy becomes the stock price, at least becomes a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah,
for him to have
BTC.
More Bitcoin.
He cashes out the BTC and leaves it alone. Yeah.
And I would guess that he's not going to be a forever hodler of Bitcoin. He will sell as much as he needs to get the things he wants in life, like real estate or whatever. And so he might, I don't think he'll sell the whole thing, but it's for him, it's a tool for him to acquire more wealth, right? Now, that's probably how it's going to happen. I don't think he's going to dump BTC for MicroStrategy, because
that doesn't seem to make sense. I don't think that.
I don't think that. So just all these maxis who bought MSTR is their NGMI, as they say. But here's the I would say that's like a 80-90% chance is it's going to go that way of MicroStrategy is going to crash at some point. Bitcoin go down a little bit, but he used all this leverage to get a lot of Bitcoin. Now he has it, and even crashed Bitcoin is still worth a lot, and he's still going to be able to do all the rich man things he does. But there's also like a 10% thing of like that custodial risk ends up having either a government type seizure situation or a hack. Like how is he not sweating his ugly ass balls off after seeing the Bybit shit? Like, it's just Ethereum and it's a shitcoin, it's just Bitcoin only. Is that really what he's thinking? He doesn't say what he's thinking.
He's probably not sweating it, because he's like, well, if I get rugged for this money, I'll just lawyer up and then sue Coinbase and say, you lost my money, give me back the money, and then it'll be their problem,
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to work super well. But the thing is, imagine what would happen if Saylor got rugged by a hacker. It just
that would be pretty funny.
Imagine all that Bitcoin gets taken out, like Coinbase gets hacked, and then all of us, or even Coinbase gets hacked for like, I'm sure they have very robust security practice. I mean, it's got to be like the proverbial, not the crappy Fort Knox that exists, but the proverbial Fort Knox. It's got to be locked down. Like, they're custodying a lot of people's things, whereas Bybit's just an exchange. Even though it was a big one, it's still, it's more of a hot exchange. So the Coinbase custody stuff has got to be super ironclad. However, there is still a chance that something happens, and then there just isn't all that Bitcoin that was behind this stuff, and then that'll cause a lot of crashes and stuff. But that's kind of how it is. I will flash on the screen, lost $6 billion in a day, the daily news. And this finance a lot fellow, is this your Bitcoin leader, bro?
Did he go to jail last time?
I don't think so.
I don't know all the backstory. Well, that just makes me think that whatever he's doing, he knows what he's doing,
Yes. And then he also, the same, I don't really know what this person posts of value other than Saylor hate content, but I'm here for it, right? He posted he says, Forbes don't miss, January 30, 2025. And he shows, the Forbes, the Bitcoin Alchemist thing with
all the scams.
And then Theranos lady. I forget who this other guy was. This the WeWork guy? And then obviously the SBF fellow, who, by the way, is posting on X from prison or something about like federal workers being laid off and how he's like sympathetic towards them and stuff. I'm like, dude, aren't you supposed to be doing time, my homie? Like, what the hell's going on here?
That's a case of we all live in the real world, though. That's like real talk. Real talk. If SBF wants to tweet from jail, just give him a phone and let him crack on with it, lads. Like, this is the real world. We can have a few tweets.
If somehow like Ross Ulbricht was able to do it from prison and his wife
that was with his girlfriend, yeah, or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so.
Who's SBF? He's got what's the name? Caroline on the outside.
Yeah, I don't think Grippy's rolling with him anymore, But the point is, maybe he's got prison.
He's got
Grippy.
street cred. Yeah, exactly.
But that's the thing is like, if you were his cellmate or whatever else, you're in there for who knows what, and he just says, "I kind of want to tweet about this stuff." Wouldn't you like let him or facilitate it? I would. I absolutely would. I'm like, oh, he wants to put out this not. Let her fly. Let me see.
It's gonna go. Yeah.
Let her fly. It's great.
Tap this Morse code out on the fucking pipe that leads to the bathroom, and let's get this going, guys.
Yeah, especially if he starts, like, I'd probably be like, first, sure, but second, what are you gonna post about? I want to know, and just like I want to talk about how it sucks to be laid off and all these federal workers. I'm like, definitely. Here you go. Here's my phone. Like, I would definitely, or if he's like making like investment recommendations or something, I'd be like, please, absolutely. You just call the warden. Hey, the warden will do it off of his phone. I don't care. Like, someone will do it because this is great content.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing content.
Oh, man.
So let's hit on Bliss and then anything else you want to talk about. And then, let me just flip over to the screen where you can see that stuff. It's a 4-minute video, so I don't think I need to like play it and stuff. But no. Says, heard about Velma, seeing all those turquoise ladies all over the place and wondering what this is all about. BCH's Velma upgrade explained in 4 minutes, which I'll link in the chats and stuff in case you don't see it. Grab your own Velma to attend Bliss 2025 and celebrate with some of the best builders and latest info on the P2P cash revolution. Fun stuff. So, are you organizing Bliss, or is that someone else this time?
No, I'm organizing it. Same team.
Nice.
Me, Ryan, and Jonathan. We ran it last year. The first thing I'd ever run as an event, like outside of a house party, basically, and went great.
It's daunting, isn't it? Because sometimes
it is, man. We're running this event in a country that none of us are actually based in, right? With inviting people from all over the world for this first of its kind type of event, right? It all went super smoothly, though. We didn't have any problems. We did not have one single complaint. Like, not one person complained, the food wasn't good enough, or I had a problem with my room, or I didn't like the event, or like nothing. Like, we had no bad feedback at all. And it all went great. I had a blast. Everybody had a blast. And it all went really well. So then when we waited a couple months afterwards, gave ourselves some time to wind down. And then Jonathan said, guys, you want to run it back and do it again next year? And we were like, yes. And so, yeah, we've been working on it ever since. I mean, this kind of stuff takes a lot of organizing. I mean, I know that's saying the obvious, right? But like literally, it's 3 months away, or whatever, 2.5 months. And we were organizing it already for 6 or 7 months, starting slowly, but then ramping it up. So yeah, it's going to be coming back again, the BCH conference where the upgrade goes live, which this year is the VM limits. Velma, we've got the NFT tickets, same as before. All the information about it is on bliss.cash, and on the Twitter page for your audience is probably pretty switched on, so they can go there and see all the latest banter. They'll be right up with that. But I'm super excited for it, man. It's going to be great. And because once you do it once, it can be like, wow, that was a cool thing, and people have some good memories. Once you do it twice, then it's a thing. It's like it becomes an expectation. Now you're
stuck.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm so keen for that, man. I'm so keen for that, because part of the reason that it came about, why I was on board in the first place with doing it when Jonathan asked me about it in the first place, was because in the previous years, in 2021, 2022, I'd been on the podcast reviewing what was happening at the Big Point Magazine conference, and it's like pointing out, okay, this makes sense. This is a good innovation, but mostly like this sucks. You can see the problems with everything they're doing here. But at a certain point, you got to be like, well, if you're so smart, if you're so much better, why don't you run a conference and show them how it's done, right? And I had that thought internally to myself. So when the opportunity came up, I jumped on it, and I was so pleased with our first version. I mean, starting small, but we did more crypto than I felt like everything's an NFT ticket sold only on chain for BCH. A bunch of people came who only spent BCH at the hotel, at restaurants, at the event, with their travel in and out, right? Everything. Like, we did it actually properly as a crypto conference, the way that people think it should be, rather than what I gather what it's actually like, where it doesn't always meet that bar or even get close. And so I'm excited, and I want everybody to come along. If you're interested in BCH, what's happening in Bitcoin Cash, that will be the number one way for you to, one, meet a bunch of people in the scene, two, figure out what's going on, and three, like, there's just so much opportunity. We've only had one, and the amount of people that made a connect there that led on to them, getting a job behind the scenes, or, some kind of deal, or finding out about some info that they wouldn't have had otherwise, has been massive. Starting a collaboration with someone that they met there has been massive. So, and that was just our first attempt, and we're re-upping and doing it even better this year. So it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's in Slovenia, right?
Yeah, Ljubljana.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, I would absolutely love to go at some point this year. Listen, freaking so much stuff going on, so many conferences I have to go to for work and everything like that. And I will sort of give so I'm going to throw that up on the screen as well, just for oops, wrong one. I'll throw that in a second. I'm speaking at ETHDAM for the third year in a row. ETHDAM is I would say, so having not been to Bliss, I can say this and not offend people. It's the best crypto conference I've been to. And partially because you have that little BCH like vibe into it, because the key sponsor, whatever, is usually Cyber Capital, which is Justin Bonds, who was famously a very strong BCH advocate, and it's organized by Eleanor Blanc, who used to be of Satoshi's Angels, etc. So it's like the same people, just continue on the mission. Great conference in Amsterdam. Very not so ETH-centric, so don't let that fool you. But as it says, at ETHDAM we stand for the cypherpunk ideals of privacy, ownership, and censorship resistant. May you build the best tools for tomorrow and make friends for life. That's kind of their vibe. So I will be there, and that's May 9 through 11. And immediately after, not immediately after, but very close to immediately after, is Consensus in Toronto, which I unfortunately will probably have to be at. And if I picked off of my own personal thing, I'd rather go to Bliss, if I'm perfectly honest. But
amazing,
I'd have to go there. Unfortunately, it's at the same time, and I probably not even go home. I'm probably just gonna go right from Amsterdam to Toronto to do that. So if there were some time to squeeze in there, but I mean, if this is a thing now, then there will be next year. And Consensus last year didn't overlap, so probably won't this time. So it'll be a good one to go to. I would recommend people go to both ETHDAM and Bliss. Why not? Go to ETHDAM.
Yeah, do an Europe thing. If you're going to be in Europe, the dates line up nicely. Ours is 13th to the 15th. So if you said it's 9th to the 11th, that's perfect. You can do that. One day of travel on either side. You can do an extra day of sightseeing in the Netherlands or an extra day in Slovenia, and then boom. Like, people who are in Europe, it's good because there's a bit of a Europe crypto scene. And if you're not from Europe, it's a great opportunity to, like, it's an excuse. You're already going there. Europe's pretty small. You can get around easily, visit some of your other countries you've always wanted to check out. Boom.
And, like, I'm not trying to talk smack here about the lovely, like, I'm actually a very, despite being one of the most hardcore freedom people you'd meet, I am a big fan. Outside of that aspect, I'm a big fan of Europe. And also, having lived in the UK before and lived in France, I have to say that, like, the Netherlands and Croatia and Germany, like, those kinds of areas of Europe are probably a little nicer. Like as far as if everyone's like, oh, let me go to Paris, and then they just get spit on or robbed by some, or
Yeah.
panhandled, or you know, maybe not go there. Or like, Spain is great, but then also like Barcelona is also. I went to ZCon 2023 there. It was great, but also like, there's always like more dirtiness and crime and stuff, and a lot of these more touristy hotspot areas. And like Amsterdam is fantastic. I love Amsterdam. As far as like it's the one big city in the world I would consider living in. And I'm sure Slovenia I have not been, but I've been to enough
It's
places
really lovely,
around
man.
it that I can assume what it would be like. And sounds great.
Super nice, man. It's like almost like you're being there. I felt like last year when we were there, which was the first time I'd been there. It was like you're in a fairy tale a little bit there in the middle of the European summer. They just have those little kind of like fairy lights by the river and stuff in the old town. There's things are a bit cobbled. It's a little bit spread out. It's not a massive like major metropolis kind of vibe. People are just sitting by the river having their wine and beer and having a talk, like very European vibe. Really, Ryan, it was his first time he'd been in Europe, and I think he was really getting a sense of like, wow, like because in his mind he's like, okay, America, he knows America, but America's the new world, Europe's the old world. And all those like fantasy series and stuff, whatever you read about that all comes from somewhere. That's all real. Like Europe really is the old world in that sense. For people who don't know, either aren't European or have America, that's actually the vibe. The new world versus the old world. They didn't just get those names from nowhere,
Yeah. And for example, that's one of the reasons I live where I do right now. It's probably the freest place on the entire planet, but also it's one of the oldest spots in the New World. As far as like the town I used to live in a town that was founded in 1623, which is by European standards, but by like New World standards, that's
America's
like,
that's
crazy.
That's all, yeah.
And so I like the old stuff and all that kind of stuff too. And by the way, I did have a comment on X from the one and only Patriot Sounds, who's a THORChain guy. That's probably why he's watching this thing. He commented, "I don't know much about BCH. I'll have to look into it." Is his comment?
Hell yeah!
After
check out the BCH podcast. Let's go, baby. You'll love it.
Yes, for sure. But yeah, it's great. Random other plug on that thing. There's this social media site called Inleo, which runs on the Hive blockchain, which I don't know if anyone from the old school days remembers Steam. It's the surviving fork of Steam. It's the Bitcoin. It's the Steam Cash, as it were.
It's Steam Cash.
Yes. And also many years later, although unlike Steam, where like the Steam's kind of dead, whereas BTC's still around and big, right? But it's like literally what's left. It's like the fork is the remnant who forked off to keep, a takeover. And
they were kind of vindicated then. Yeah. Good for them.
And they have quite a nice, I went to Hive Fest in Croatia last year. They invited me to come out there and speak, and they have a very good community and very cypherpunk kind of focused, very much into, mom and pop merchant adoption and stuff too for all their stuff. And a very kind of sisterhood sort of, very good sister community of anyone who's into that stuff. But the point is, Inleo has, we did a big Dash partnership with them, and basically you can earn BCH if you post on this site, right? Because it uses the Hive blockchain for everything. They have their own block reward that goes towards content creators, etc. And if you sign up with a key store wallet, which anyone who's used THORChain for UTXO coins like BCH knows what a key store is. You can create one out of whatever seed phrase of whatever BCH wallet you have. You just log in, create an account, start posting, and then can cash out directly to BCH, which goes through like THORChain rails to get to. And so basically, if you want to use a fun social media site that doesn't look like Memo, I'm sorry, Memo, I love Memo, but it looks like a potato. So if you want something that's pretty well full-featured, just almost as full-featured as X is, Inleo would be a great place to go, and you can earn BCH. So, yeah.
Is that open source, by the way?
Parts of it are, for sure. And there's been a kind of ongoing thing. The actual posts and account and everything like that is all on Hive, so all that is obviously open source. Right. it's the actual the money is all that open source. It's just as far as I understand, they are open sourcing, in the process of open sourcing the onboarding engine. So pretty much everything is open sourced. And like everything with a blockchain, I love me a good block explorer. You can go digging around and like, I posted here. Where is it here? You can also take your keys and plug them into a different Hive interface, and all your posts and stuff will still be there, and all your money and your credits and stuff. It's just all very, Inleo is the one that works well with other communities. And so, yeah, it's a fun thing to check out. I'll drop it in some group if someone wants to kind of look into that stuff. Good thing is like you don't have to sort of start a community from scratch. It's just already there. And yeah, so that could be fun.
Nice. I mean, crypto and social media is, yeah, I don't know if we're going to get it. It's a topic for another day, maybe, because there's so much to go into it. But I've been thinking a lot about that recently. You know, like Twitch didn't really work out. Yeah. But, you know, there's something to that, right? It was still reasonably popular for what it was. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, you kind of have the BTC guys have been doing Lightning tips on Nostr, which has its custodial elements, and they haven't really made it thrive just yet. But, you know, it's kind of the same idea, right? BCH has Memo, and read.cash, and for a while we had Noise as well, which is, it's like everybody's kind of in the zone of something good there, but nobody's just found the right formula to make it really sing. And that's what this Hive project sounds like the same to me. You know, there's that people know there's some gold here, just nobody's hit, you know, where's the gold seam quite yet.
Yeah, and I'll have to have a big post or whatever on Hive some other day, but Hive is great, and there's just like some reason, like there's a lot of reasons maybe it hasn't popped out and gone into the mainstream, and some of this might just be things that other chains can kind of help out with, as far as like, you know, it's so hard to bootstrap an economy with like so few exchanges, for example, and it's like, well, if you could cash out to BCH, now all of a sudden you're in that whole world, and now, you know, that whole thing just goes back and forth. So just a good thing to look into. I'll post some links somewhere about that stuff. But anyway, everyone should go to ETHDAM. Everyone should go to Bliss after that, and I'll be crying in Toronto because, you know, I haven't been to Canada yet, and I'm sure it's a shame.
You're gonna hate it. I didn't like Canada. I'm gonna just throw in I'm Australian, so yes. I do have some.
Like I could drive to Canada in about 3 hours, and like I live close enough to Canada to drive there. I've just never been. I've been to everywhere else. It's not. It's personal, clearly, and so yeah. I'm sure consensus will be great, but the point is I'd rather not be there, but whatever. I'll be crying in Canada while everyone else will go right from ETHDAM to Bliss. And yeah, it'll be fun. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking maybe I need to get that lined up. The only thing is going to be whether or not, you know, 3 days of ETHDAM would just wreck me, like, because when you're running an event, that's about as intense as it gets. Like, you can have a big time at an event, but if you're actually running the event, it's like that times 2 at least.
Yeah, I would like, and especially if you run it proper. Like I have run events before of, you know, a few hundred people and stuff like that. I've you know, the missus has done the same thing. Obviously, I've seen like ETHDAM. The first year was fantastic. I mean, I don't know if it's their first year, but my first year was fantastic. And then the next, you know, the after party, whatever, went from like 8 p.m. to around 4:30 a.m. and just going strong the whole way. And then the next year, Eleanor tried to do the same thing, but at like 2:30, people literally forced her to go home because she was like 8.5 months pregnant at that point. It's just like, lady, you're doing a great job.
Just
out. He's like, all right, fine. And it's like, but like that kind of like madness that takes to do an event, or like, yeah, I understand. I don't think you should personally go to ETHDAM because of this, but so whoever from the BCH committee is not organizing,
part of me is
part
of me is tempted. Maybe I could go to day 1, day 2.
So Callisti's got to be going, right? He's going
to Well, yeah, he'll be at Bliss. So,
but he's not organizing though, right?
No. So
So
he might have to come along. Yeah, he would be a good person to get in there. Shield Celine wallet to a bunch of people.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
I'll suggest it to him. Yeah.
I'll let him know for sure. All right. Well, I've rambled for long enough. Let's wrap everything up. Follow the BCH podcast on X. Go to Bliss as I, linked over there. Watch the whole stuff and sell your MicroStrategy. Like not financial advice, but
Yes.
but kind of financial advice.
Dump
almost.
right now.
Yeah, not financial advice, but come on, bro, get rid of that.
Bullish Lazarus, bearish MicroStrategy.
I can't end on a better quote than that. See you guys next week. Bye bye.